Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Martha Simmons with another session of preaching and preachers on Facebook Live via Restream. Good afternoon. It's a sunny Monday in Atlanta. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Come on in. Good morning to my folk on the West Coast who get up early to check out the broadcast. Shouting out to people in the Midwest, folk on the East Coast, and certainly those in the dirty South. Come on in and let me know that you are out there for what I know is going to be another great broadcast and a helpful broadcast. Give folk a few seconds to come on in before we start this great broadcast. And when you come in, type in the name of another person. They can jump on right now, or this will be up on my page for 2 weeks. And I know Facebook is taking down videos and all of that kind of stuff, but it will be up for 2 weeks. So if you can't get on right now, you can catch the replay for 2 weeks. Come on in. And when you come in, type in the name of another person, or as the young folks say, tag somebody. Wendell Craig Woods, good to have you with me. All right. From Plainfield, New Jersey, good to have you with me. All right, type in the names of other people so they can get this information, because everyone knows that's in a church, leading a church, working at a church, that this topic is a part of everyone's discussion at some point. Come on in. Folk are coming in slowly but surely. I want to give my guest as much time as possible, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. As always, I ask that you would pray for those who are sick, pray for those who are experiencing a season of bereavement, and then pray for Ukraine and so many parts of Africa, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Mali, Mozambique, Senegal, Somalia, and South Sudan. There are wars in all of those places. Please be in prayer for those people. Happy Women's History Month. And I'm going to kick it off next Monday, March the 10th, with Dr. Angela Parker and Dr. Stephanie Crumpton talking about Black women and resistance. You do not want to miss that one. That's next Monday, okay? But today, all right, I see my child. Good afternoon, Reverend Chelsea Wade. Today, I want to talk about musicians in the Black church today. Musicians in the Black church today. And let me introduce my amazing panel. First, we have Dr. Ouida Harding. She is a proud Harlem native, and she's a PK. And she is a distinguished visionary leader in music ministry within the Black Baptist denomination. She's known for her radical and revolutionary approach to redefining music ministry leadership. She's dedicated her life's work to addressing the lack of clarity, structure, and standards in music leadership. She received her Doctor of Ministry from the Weber Institute for Worship Studies and her MDiv from ITC. She grounded her doctoral studies in worship, and she established OWH Leadership International. And she created the Minister of Music for Worship certificate program to meet critical needs. She has decades of experience, including international work. Her latest work was in Ghana. Dr. Harding continues to empower communities through the unifying power of music and by fostering meaningful collaborations between pastors and musicians. We know how important that is. Then we have the one and the only Phillip Carter, Stellar Award winner. Phillip Carter and his group Sounds of Victory are the 2010 Stellar Award winners for Fan Favorite. In 2020, he released another single, I Shall Survive, and his latest release is entitled Psalm 94:19. Your consolation brought me joy, which came out last year. He's the former director of the Georgetown University Choir and the Bowie State University Gospel Choir, and former assistant director of the Howard University Gospel Choir. He continues to be a positive influence in the lives of the youth that he's surrounded by. He was a former public school teacher in Washington, D.C. and Prince George's County area. He has invested much of his time teaching independent artists, songwriters, and musicians. He broadcasts 6 days a week to hundreds of thousands of worshipers through various platforms, including, of course, Facebook, YouTube, under the Hymns with Phillip Carter brand. He serves as president and CEO of SOV Inc. and Phillip Carter Music. And then last but not least, Dr. Chad Brawley. Dr. Brawley has worked in full-time ministry for over 20 years. He's had the privilege of serving some of America's most noted ministries, such as the Potter's House, Heritage Christian Center of Denver, Good Hope Baptist Church, and Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. He is currently serving as the pastor of worship arts at the Luke Church in Humboldt, Texas. He received his Bachelor's Arts in Sciences from the University of North Texas and a Master of Arts in Worship from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and he earned the Doctor of Ministry from the School of Theology at Boston University. He is available. His music, his work can be found on all the digital musical platforms. His We Worship project can be found all over the place. He is committed to assisting pastors, churches, and practitioners so that they can realize their full potential as conduits of transformation through worship arts. He created the Brawley Group, a church consulting firm that equips leaders to serve at their highest potential. And I want to say from the get-go, if you all are having difficulty with music, musicians, understanding worship, all of those kinds of things, trying to get your worship to the next level, these are people you should call. These don't make it complicated. Go to the best, and you don't need the rest. Go to the best. And right now we've got some great folk out here, but these are three of the best. Let me get right into my topic. If you are on, type in the name of another person who needs to view this broadcast. They can jump on right now, or they'll be able to watch it for 2 weeks on my page, Dr. Martha Simmons. Let's get to it. I've got plenty of questions for these folks. Okay. Let me start this way. As churches continue to shrink, okay, and I just saw a report that says they think the shrinking is about to stop or has stopped. I don't know about that, but I do know that churches have been shrinking for the last 5 years. Do small, meaning under 50 people, and mid-sized churches really need new requirements when they're hiring church musicians. And by that I mean, should these churches expect musicians to do weekly in-person rehearsals, do 4 services a month, read music, etc., given that churches are shrinking, which means they can't pay well, okay? And it means other thing. And I'm going to start with Mr. Carter. What's your sense of that? Unmute.
Sorry about that. What happened again? You asked the question assuming that they have requirements. Most churches 50 and 50 members or even 500 and under don't have requirements. People have been doing things, the good old boy system. You call somebody, they find you somebody, and it's a toss up whether it works or not, because many pastors, not most, many of them never really articulated their vision on paper. Okay. And so, yes, I think there needs to be new requirements, and in many cases, there needs to be requirements, period. And I think your requirements should match what your church can currently do, not just in budget, but just in manpower, women power, in personnel. Okay. It should match that. So you want me to have all these skills, but you don't even have the people that we can use to carry out the skills that you want me to have. Oh. So I think that that's vital when it comes to a small church. Writing down that vision, making sure that you go to somebody, a consultant like these two, to look over that vision to see if it's realistic or not. If you look at some of these job descriptions, you be like, why, you can't really be asking all of this, especially for the money that you're offering. And then I read it was a job description last week with a pastor of a major church here, and he wouldn't mind me saying it because we talk about it. He wouldn't mind me saying he wants you to tithe to his church.
Whoa.
So, if you want all that, but at least he articulated it though. This is what's written. Everybody's reading it. So yes, I think you need to have, for whatever you're asking for, you need requirements for, and you need to have the personnel to carry it through.
Dr. Brawley, what are your thoughts? Should they be expecting these folk to do weekly in-person rehearsals, 4 services a month, etc., read music? What do you think?
Well, I do agree with Mr. Carter that many of the churches that we're discussing don't even have any type of requirements or regulations or anything like that. I also feel like the church should require what the church can afford, like he said, financially and with regard to manpower. As far as reading music, I don't see that as a necessity necessarily. It depends on the church. If the church does music that is largely scored and not recorded, or vice versa, or a mix of music where reading music is necessary, then absolutely. Now, I'm a proponent of reading music, period. But I know many churches don't require that because their repertoire doesn't necessarily require that. And finding people who read well and all that kind of stuff is kind of difficult nowadays. But I think the churches should require and expect what they're able to pay for and support holistically as a ministry.
Dr. Harding, what are you thinking? What should they be requiring? Make sure you unmute. She didn't unmute either. Unmute. Hello. You got to unmute. Okay.
She was there.
Dr. Harding.
Hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. I would say adjustments need to be made. There are churches that have requirements. There are churches that don't have requirements. I would say adjust. Do I believe that there should be consistent rehearsals? Yes. Just as a pastor must prepare, just as basketball players practice, people who we are recording artists, they practice, they prepare. I do not see that the size of the church should make the difference in the preparation. I believe that adjustments need to be made. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's it.
Okay. All right. Dr. Harding, what is your sense of this thing about reading music? So many complaints, and a lot of them, we see online about people reading music. What are your thoughts on that?
Being a music leader in a church and not knowing at least how to cite seed is like a pastor that doesn't know the books of the Bible.
Whoa. Okay.
I believe that you are as good as you allow yourself to be. And why lower the bar if you're going to call yourself a music leader? Would I demand it if I was pastoring a church? No, but I would strongly suggest and highly recommend to make yourself marketable.
Okay. All right. Mr. Carter, is it my imagination, or are churches constantly performing, and I'm not including the hymns now, but are they constantly performing the same music? I mean, I go to church and I don't mind, older songs from time to time, but I keep hearing songs that I've heard for the last 20 years. Is there any new good Black church music? Am I just going to the wrong place?
Yes, there is plenty.
Okay.
And when people ask that question, I have to ask it with the question: where are you going to hear your music?
Okay.
If it's to the radio, then you're going to get a certain amount, especially if it's a syndicated radio network. They only allow a certain amount of songs in rotation per every 3 or 4 months, and it could be whatever their audience is craving for at the time. So that's not the resource for church music. Now, let me give you another idea that the millennials and below have been pushing, especially in the CCM realm churches, whether they be Black or white. Some of them advocate that you do no more than you learn a set of music and you do it for 12 to 15 weeks, so that your congregation can actually learn the song.
Okay.
So so it just depends on what the expectation is, how that goes.
Okay. Dr. Brawley, what's your sense? Are churches singing the same music? Maybe that they doing that 12 to 15 week thing. Are they singing the same thing, or is there a lot of new good music out there?
I think the answer is yes and no to all of that a little bit. Yes, there's lots of great new music. It does depend on where you go to get it. It's not necessarily on the radio, especially if you're looking for something that has some theological weight. Sometimes you have to look in places like new music classes in the conventions. You need to get the songbook from Hampton. You need to get the songbook from GMWA. All those places where a lot of music is, but it's not on the radio for a number of different reasons. I also feel like within all of our services, because most of our churches in some way, many churches are multi different age groups, so we want to provide space to where everybody can plug into the service and everybody can be touched and receive something they can identify with. So I would say it's very important to have a large breadth of music, whether it's old music being repeated or new music. And yes, many of those of us who do music ministry in church all the time, we do repeat music for the sake of comfort, for the sake of familiarity, because people worship often a little bit better when they're familiar and they don't have to always think, let me learn the melody, let me try to read the words, let me figure this out. So if it's something that they've heard a few times, then that lowers their discomfort and they're able to participate and actually really engage God. Now, I don't feel like they need to sing the same song for a whole year, but there is time that people need to learn the music and be able to grasp it. So a nice mix of new and old. Like for instance, if you're going to do something new, use the sandwich method and put older things on the east side of it, or reverse it and kind of do medleys. It's ways to keep it fresh. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
There are ways to keep it fresh.
Dr. Harding, what is your sense? What are you hearing? Are you hearing a lot of new music, or are you hearing the same music basically over and over again?
Both. And I take a whole different stand. I don't choose music because of age. I choose music that has a message and that is relevant to the ethos of that congregation. New music you can get from the different conferences and bring it, and then it also depends on the type of musician you have, the expectations of the pastor. And so, because someone had asked me for a song and I gave it to her, she said, well, that's old. And I said, well, if you consider the Bible, the age of the Bible, and Jesus is older, what are you looking for? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say.
That's fine.
So, yeah. Depends on music for decades. You don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Like Professor Brawley said, get a balance. But I seek music that speaks to the congregation in the same way a pastor would speak through his or her sermon.
Okay. So, Mr. Carter, is there, we know AI is all over the place, impacting everything. And have you seen it really impact the work of church musicians? And if so, is it helping? How is it hurting? And if you're going to hire like a minister of worship and art, must they understand AI?
Wow, that's loaded. But I'll tell you this.
Yeah, I did. I tried to sneak. I snuck 2 or 3 questions in that one.
It's all good. Is AI impacting the work of church music? I wouldn't say now it's not, unless you are if you are an administrator, then AI is impacting your work, because it can certainly shorten the time and help shorten the time that you communicate with others and help you to communicate more effectively with others. So I'm not sure if it's invaded the space of musical work, maybe in production behind the scenes. And I will also say, when you said should it be a requirement right now, maybe not, but what is technology.
Okay.
So if I'm 50 today, if I was 20 today, if I was hiring a 20-year-old and they didn't know how to use a music software, if they didn't know how to run a track or a loop, if they didn't have basic understanding of sound, in addition to the other skills, which is that's loaded too, then I'd be apprehensive, because I'm looking towards the future. And if you can't take me to the future, then I don't know what role you would play, because more than likely I probably have somebody my age already there who can do what it is, the other stuff. I need you to guide us into the future.
Dr. Harding, what's your sense? What are you seeing? What's AI doing?
AI can help with planning, transcribing music. What AI cannot do is be the spiritual part of worship. I think that if you use it to set your framework and then work inside it, that would be good. The other side of it is that AI could make musicians lazy, because they wouldn't have to study. I mean, it's right there. And I know some people have a problem with it, but like the transcribers on the keyboards, there are some people who can only place their fingers on certain notes. And instead of learning the different keys, just press the button. And so if AI is used to help arrange plan, generate backing tracks, yes. But if it's trying to replace the spiritual sensitivity, nah.
Mm-mm. Dr. Brawley, what's your sense? Is it just is what's AI doing, and what is needed in terms of, you hire folk, you have a whole group of folk who work with you. What are you looking for in terms of skill set?
I think AI is definitely necessary, not necessarily required, but it is a tool, just like everything else. It's new, so we're learning how to use it, but I use it often with regard to planning, with regard to searching for music by theme or by scripture or title. It just brings a world of information closer to you, and it shortens some of the distance that you have to go to find things. There are also AI apps and programs that compose music, that help to arrange music and things like that. And I totally agree. It's not going to give you spirituality, but I think kind of like when the internet first came about, and a lot of people were like, this is a bad thing, but it's not that the tool is bad. It's that we just have to manage it, which is what we already said. You have to manage it and add to it, just like if you use AI to write a sermon or something like that. You still have to edit it. You still have to think through it, check for errors, make sure it's good, and make sure it works, and and then add your pieces to it to make it still. So we can't depend totally on AI, but it is a great tool. I've written scripts with AI as well.
You do what with AI?
I've used AI to assist with writing scripts for worship, like spoken word pieces or any kind of drama, any of those kind of things to go with the music is very helpful.
Okay. So, Mr. Carter, I'm just going to go ahead and bring this up because it's an issue regularly. And I do mean regularly. I hear about churches that have fired a musician. Is it my imagination, or is there a great deal of musician turnover at small and mid-sized churches?
Well, the answer is yes, and you can also add mega as well.
Okay.
So yeah, there is a turnover, and it probably goes back to the first question you asked in terms of vision and mission, and then I am, and before I complain, I need to look at myself in the mirror and say, Phillip, you need to do this. But there's not a resource in seminary to help pastors, and with at least I haven't discovered a resource in seminary to help pastors with musicians and being great bosses and all of that, because I think that's the root of the problem. Yes, musicians have issues. Some of them smoke weed. They doing it's all kind of stuff going on with musicians. But the buck still stops with you. So I get real irritated when a pastor starts complaining about musicians, but you hired them.
Okay.
You hired them. Okay. You had no standards when you hired them, and now they're in here. You have a nerve to complain.
Whoa.
So that really burns me, because if you are the shepherd of that house, it's your job to protect your sheep. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Dr. Harding, what's your sense? Are you seeing a lot of turnover?
Yes, I do. Generally speaking, pastors are not concerned about nurturing the musicians or the music leaders spiritually.
Right.
They want to know, are they committed? Are they capable? And can they play? Period. They don't think about the compatibility factor. And then there are some pastors, and I'll just put it out there, that if the musician's light is brighter than the pastor's, you got to go.
That's correct.
Whoa.
Correct.
Okay, Dr. Brawley, what's your sense? I mean, this turnover. We've always seen turnover, but it appears that right after or since COVID, it's like major turnover. What are you seeing?
Well, during COVID, musicians were able to play for 2 or 3 or 4 churches at one time. That is now stopped because everybody's back in church. I'm not sure that we do a great job with onboarding at church.
Oh,
We just kind of
okay.
find somebody like Ms. Harding said, who can play and get the job done at whatever level. Some people take it at a low level even, but we don't do a good job with providing job descriptions that are thoughtful, that are meaningful, and that are clear. And we don't onboard people. And so because of that, people come in and they really don't know the house or know what's going on or know what expectations may be had of them. And even with regard to long-term vision, sometimes the flow of worship and things about the church change, but
Right,
pastors don't communicate those changes well, um,
right.
and don't talk through that with the musicians. And so then at some point there becomes a problem because there's a clashing, because changes have been made, but we haven't onboarded people well or kept people in the know or communicated well, um, or hired well.
Okay.
And Dr.
Okay.
Martha,
Go right ahead,
let's
Miss
add some
Phillip
balance. I mean,
Carter.
musicians have responsibility too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
we all are musicians. They have a responsibility too. You accepted that position. You accepted that role, and you knew. And most of the time, you knew what that person like or that leadership was like when you came in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know all of this, then there shouldn't be a turnover ratio, because you would have made a commitment in your heart and mind that this is where I need to be, or this is where I'm going to serve. So there is a responsibility on the to the musician or worship leader, whoever took that job, not to go in like it's a gig, and really do what it is you're being called to do or being asked to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And in just and thinking about that, you all basically just said, there are pastors who are not distinguishing between hiring a performer or a ministry partner. Okay.
Yeah.
And so without clear standards, expectations are get blurred, of course. Um, with that said, Dr. Harding, what kind of standards are we talking about?
First of all, the pastors need to stop treating us as commodities, and we need to stop acting like it.
Right.
Whoa.
I used to have a problem with people digging in the church, but I've been able to distinguish. There are people who play at the church because it's a hobby.
Okay.
There are some people who play at the church because it's their professional alignment. And then there are those who play because it's their calling. So job, hobby, calling. And if you pick the person that's the hobbyist, it doesn't matter how much money you offer him or her. When they tired, they're not coming. A
Mm.
person that does it as a job, allow them to do, you take care of the spiritual stuff. Let them do their job. But a person that does this thing as a calling, you have to be able to talk with you. You have to set the standard anyway of what you're expecting. But especially that person who does it as a calling, I think pastors need to see that person as a partner and not a competitor.
Mhm.
I also believe that the things that pastors use to reel us in, they need to maintain that.
Okay.
Once you get a good person in there, a music leader that is compatible with how you want to do it, don't drop them at the table. If you use them, just take them out to dinner in the beginning every month or so. Take them out, see where their head is. That's how you can match. And then there are pastors who look at, some of them want, for me, a music department or a music ministry. Now, a music ministry, for me, you have a congregation. Everybody comes to worship the Lord. And my definition of worship is our response to God. And so you have the people coming unified to hear a word from the Lord, whether it's through the preaching or the music. But when you have the music department, you have the top 40. You have people who come with the show me attitude. You have the hype there. They come to be entertained. And a lot of pastors are hiring musicians who are from the performance side of the house. And it's crisscross. You have the performers in the ministry setting and the ministers in the performing setting. So that's pure chaos.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm asking, Dr. Brawley. If you don't distinguish between hiring a performer or a ministry partner, that it it's interesting what you end up getting. So, what type of standards, again, are we talking about? I always see people say, well, the problem is they don't have any standards for their worship and arts department or their church. What type of standards are we talking about?
Well, I think for sure those who are going to serve in ministry should prepare for doing ministry. And I think that's one of the things that doesn't happen very much anymore. I think earlier someone mentioned the fact that people don't really study music anymore. And so the same thing for actually doing ministry. Working in a church, doing ministry is significantly different than playing in a club or playing, a theater musician or different other secular spaces where music happens. Doing ministry is very different, and people need to prepare for that. People need to study for that. People need to be called to that. And I think I agree with my sister. Pastors, if a pastor can invest in the personal side of musicians and kind of care about musicians more than just hirelings, that will help. And musicians also have to not come in as hirelings, but really come in as ministry partners. We don't define what ministry partnership really looks like. We don't meet together very often as pastors and musicians. And many musicians, and I think we also need to clarify, are we talking about the minister of music, the worship pastor? Are we talking about the keyboard player only, the choir director? Because each one of those roles requires a different level of connection and commitment and different things like that, the way they work out. But pastors need to absolutely make sure that expectations are clear and that the people that they're hiring are equipped to be ministry partners and see the role and understand, that music is part of congregational discipleship and spiritual formation. What does that look like? What does that mean? How experienced is the musician with facilitating worship and growth in people's lives and understanding that calling, because that's the calling. It's not a calling to play an A flat with the preacher. The calling is to cultivate ministry that impacts people's lives and helps people grow spiritually. And that's a little bit different than creating a set list for, a show or whatever. You have way more to consider, or different things to consider. Let me say it that way. And that all needs to be in mind.
And so, Mr. Carter, what kind of standards are we looking for? If pastors aren't, it's I think just like he said, we got folk who are like, look, can you do the set list? And then follow me and pick me up when I'm preaching. Okay. Can you get my key? And that's pretty much it. So, what kind of standards are we talking about or should be talking about?
I think Dr. Brawley hit it. He hit it hard. Justin, and I would when I've interviewed pastors or when I'm consulting pastors, my number one question is, what is your goal? And when they answer that question, get this, that lets me know whether they are a performer or not.
Okay.
Okay. Some of them are performers, but they hire a true called minister of music, and it doesn't go well. Because here I am, I'm trying to find music to feed the congregation, and you want me to sing the top 40 because that's who you are. And that
or just shout.
Say that again.
Or just shout to people, or do all the stuff that sensationalize.
Praise breaks.
Yeah, and then there
a lot of pastors don't want ministers. They just want someone to play, keep the hype going. They're not looking for musical competence. They're not looking for commitment to preparation. And some musicians aren't either, because there's some musicians that will say, "Okay, Pastor, I'm gonna play for you. Have my paycheck ready, because if you start hooping at 12:01, I got to be somewhere at 12:30. I'm putting my keyboard together and I'm out of here." And so there you go again with the compatibility factor. What are you looking for? What are your expectations? What do you want? What do you need?
So if
and are you prepared?
If I may add to this, Dr. Moffat, some of this problem is facilitated based off of the pastor's view of what the role of music is.
Okay.
Because a lot of pastors and a lot of people will say, all you can do for me is set me up.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you don't look at music is the word, I mean, what we do in church is the word in song. We sing the word, you preach the word. And if you have another definition, then stop hooping at the end of your sermon. You know, because it goes together. You proclaim it, I'm singing it. We go together. And if you look at it that way, then that's a whole nother dynamic of ministry. You're looking at a whole nother dynamic of ministry. But a lot of pastors don't see it that way. That's why they make comments like, you shut off the music, but you don't shut off my preaching. Because you don't see it. You don't see it as one. You see it as this segment. All you do is music. If that be the case, then I want my salary to be raised. I want concert money. Because that's what I do. That's what I do. We're doing ministry
just music.
now. Yeah, you're just doing music.
Yeah.
It has no power.
Yeah.
You know what? There are pastors that say, "Yeah, we heard the singing. The singing was nice, but now it's time for the word."
There you
that
go.
burns me.
God, Lord,
I
have
wait
mercy.
for God to go with that.
Yeah.
And then J. Wendell Mapson in the Ministry of Music in the Black Church said that in the Black church, music is the bloodline of worship, at least in our culture. But then again, it goes back to what Brawley and Carter said. A lot of pastors don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And if you ask them, they think that you're challenging them. And heaven's sakes, don't know more than that they do. Don't.
Yeah.
So we're talking about what I think I hear each of you saying is that there's just a need for, number one, clear standards, and number two, an understanding of what you want as a pastor, what you want. And if you are not sure, you can call people like these folks to find out. If you say you want an A, B, and a C, what does that mean? Okay? Because I don't think a lot of pastors are asked, what are your top 3 concerns? Because then you know what it is that they're really trying to get for their music ministry. This has been, oh my goodness, this is so good. Mr. Carter, tell me about resources. Okay, because we're talking about the difficulties and the problems, and are there resources to help pastors and musicians work together better or harmoniously? Are there resources to do that?
I would say yes. She held up one of them. That's a resource. And I think right now in the Black church, the greatest resource are tenured ministers of music. People are the resource because we don't have a lot of literature out on it. But we are the greatest resource right now. The people who've been successful, who have good reputations, who can really guide you through. I've had some young pastors call me, and the greatest thing, I'm gonna bring tears to my eyes, and says, "I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me?" That means we can start from the beginning. We can lay it out and make it work. And when somebody says that, it can admit that they need help in that arena, they're on their way to success.
Okay. Dr. Brawley, what's your sense? Talk to me about resources.
I agree. People are the best resource, especially those who have done it for a while and had a level of success. I definitely feel like there are resources at the conferences. Maybe some a little more than others. But there are definitely resources.
Give the people the help. Give me some names.
Okay. So I think it depends on what the church is looking for musically. So especially if you have a church, or if you're serving at a church where the musical diet is very diverse, Hampton is a great space. The Hampton Ministers Conference, the music side of it is very robust with regard to teaching and music and finding music and having scores and practicing all that kind of stuff. You can leave there with a lot of great music, especially if you need the variety. I haven't been to GMWA lately or Dorsey lately, but those are also 2 Black music, sacred music spaces, conventions, where resources are available. Also, I would say that the resources need not just be for musicians, but pastors need to go to some of these things so they can understand our world and they can understand better how we can work together. It takes both of us. We shouldn't just be studying them. They need to study us as well.
Right, that's
So
what I'm
in
saying. I'm looking for
spaces
stuff to help the pastors and the musicians.
and the musicians, yeah. So pastors should go to some of the music classes in these conferences. I would also say that pastors should take some classes in seminary. So for instance, back to Hampton. Hampton is offering a worship piece in the new School of Religion. Pastors should take some of those classes so they understand history and depth of worship and stuff, so they can better articulate what they want. Or there are many other schools, seminaries and universities and stuff that offer classes. Even if you don't want to pay and take the class for a degree, take it as an elective, take it, audit the class, whatever the case. Get in some of those spaces so you can understand where we're coming from. We can work together.
Okay. So
yeah.
Dr. Harding, give me some resources that'll help pastors and musicians work together better, understand worship for churches, etc. Give me some other resources like conferences and
There is a baby conference that is going into its 4th year. The United Music and Arts Conference. Professor Craig Hayes started that, and every year, not only does it seem more people are coming, but pastors are coming.
Okay.
And he literally has carved it out where the pastors are not over there and the musicians are over there. Everybody is in the room talking together.
Okay.
And we don't just have a beef and grief period of time. We look for some solutions. National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses has a pastoral component. In fact, I think that's one of the places where I met Brother Carter when he was leading the Pastors Alliance class or whatever. And then our new moderator at the United Missionary Baptist Association in New York has allowed me to put together, I call it UMBA Academy. And we're going to have a pastor seminar where so we can find out, what's going on. How do we get here? How do we change it? Do we want to change it? And can we do it together?
Okay.
And Dr. Martha, I'm hosting a conference at the end of March called the Hymns of Phillip Carter Conference. It's a hymns and worship conference. We're not just celebrating hymns, but we're teaching new hymns. We're learning how to use hymns in this season, no matter what the culture or generational demographic of your church. And we're also educating people on hymns that were written by African Americans.
Give me date, time, place.
March 20th through the 22nd in Temple Hills, Maryland. You can go to phillipcartermusic.com and register and come and visit us. And I visit all these conferences, and all of them that are mentioned can be very, very helpful to pastors, especially if they decide to go over and see what's going on the music side.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I appreciate that.
And if I may add, I would also say forums. So for whenever pastors and musicians can get together and have discussions and be open to listen to each other and learn from each other, that's a great resource.
All right. Any other resources? Anything coming up this year? I've been hearing pastors talking about needing more things that are, what I want to say, civil rights reflected, prophetic reflected. Do we have any kinds of resources, books, etc.? Okay. He said Proctor. Anything else that'll help people that you all can think of?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Tons of books,
But forums, if a couple of pastors got together, I mean, even just go out with some musicians. Dr. Mapson told me every now and then, the musicians in the Philadelphia area, they call, we need to sit down and talk. What would it be like for a pastor to pull musicians together? So we need to sit down and talk. It shows that you care. It shows that it shows that you are strong enough to say where you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then pastors don't like people to know that they don't know in anything. But there's a lot we don't know either. And if we share what we don't know, find a common bond, I believe that we will be just as strong as we've ever been.
Yeah.
And if there's ever a time we need to be strong, it is now.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me that 5, 10 pastors can't get together in a city to just say, let's talk about worship. Let's talk about worship and arts, etc. When you got pastors all over the place that have fired 5 ministers of music
Mhm.
and still won't say the problem is me. The problem is me, and other people can help you. So again, in this season and every season, brothers and sister pastors, we've got to start to collaborate. We really got to start to collaborate and reach out to one another. We've really, really, really got to do that. That's almost my time, but Dr. Carter just wanted, Mr. Carter, rather, excuse me, want to hear anything from you as we get ready to end the broadcast. What's on your heart, your mind? What's going on in terms of worship and the kind of work you're doing?
Well, I would say what's going on in my mind, and just based off this conversation, and maybe a little extra, is that I'm Generation X. Millennials, Gen Z, are not necessarily having all of the issues that we're having. And so I'm finding this conversation about musicians and pastors to be very tiring. We can't seem to solve it in our generation. Baby boomers didn't want to solve it. And so it's a concern of mine that we are outdating ourselves with old stuff. When the modern day church, they're operating in teams and they're laughing because we can't get it together. A lot of our traditional environments just can't get it together. And if you look at a job description of let's say a church called the River Church or something like that, and if you look at their job description for the music person that they want, it's totally different from a black church. They're advocating a team that everything is spelled out what they need. They're advocating a team concept. You have authority to talk about sensitive matters, not just your music, but the sermon and the overall goal of the church. You can't do that in the black church. It's the ego is out of control, and I'm just concerned that we can't solve it. And at this point, we've been fussing with pastors for years, and I'm personally tired of it. And when you get my age, you start saying what's on your mind. And and I just think that we just need to find a way to put this to rest. And when you talk about the pastors not wanting to come to the table, a lot of it is vulnerability to their congregation. They don't want their congregation to know that they done messed up. I've had pastors go in trustee rooms, and me and him have said we had an amicable split. Everything is fine. Then go in the trustee room and paint the whole picture as if, or joint board me, paint the whole picture as if I did the church wrong.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be vulnerable enough to say, this didn't work out. I own up to my part. And so, together we can come together, because people are going to start asking you questions. And now they're going to offer their help. And you may not want their help because you don't want that kind of that access. I just advised a younger pastor a month ago that had a difficult situation in his church. I said, you put together of your choosing a team of people from the music ministry that you can work with, make them your advisory team, and you all go out and get your next minister of music with you as the leader. At least you'll have input with this next individual, and at least they can own up. They can help you own up if it doesn't work.
Okay. All right, Dr. Harding, what final comment? Anything on your mind?
Yes. First of all, I wish pastors would stop trying to be trendy. Do what works for your congregation. The second thing, a lot of pastor conferences are happening every year, and if I see anything at all that has to do with music ministry leadership. Another thing, understand what type of music leader that you're bringing on. And for those who want to know why I feel the way I do about minister of music, I have a problem with that. We call our music leaders some of the ministers of music. We don't qualify them. We don't quantify them. We don't have them do anything but make sure they can bring the hype. But yet we will license anyone else who calls himself a minister. And so I'm working on a minister of music for worship certificate program. If there's anyone who's interested, get in touch with me. Anyone who would like to come to UMAC, go to umaconline.com and you will get all the information. And then right next weekend, Brother Manny Grogan at, Faith United Baptist Church in Baltimore, he is doing a forum. And so there are things, Dr. Simmons, if pastors and musicians really want to get this thing right. Other than that, like Brother Carter said, it gets a little bit tiring sometimes because you're continuing to go down in a circle. Let's get out. Let's get moving. Let's get some work done.
Yeah, because they've been talking about this since I was singing in church choir. And we're not going to even attempt to figure out how long ago that was.
Did you sing alto?
I was going to ask you.
Pardon me?
You sang alto?
I did sing alto.
Okay.
Yeah. And I loved,
I hear it.
I loved singing. I was lead most often for an a cappella choir. I loved singing.
Did you look forward to singing in the choir, Dr. Simmons?
Did I or do I now?
Did you?
Oh yes. Yeah. I looked forward to it. I love choirs. I looked forward to it until I entered ministry. And then there was too many issues. Are you over here doing this, over here doing that, and etc. But I remember churches complaining way back then about musicians and we can't get together. The pastor and the this don't agree and etc. So I'm with Mr. Carter. At some point, we've got to solve some of this. There's got to be some breakthrough or something that says, we crossed over one line and got that fixed. Dr. Brawley, closing comments.
I believe that I hope that we could solve this. I think in order to solve it, everybody has to let the ego go. Everybody has to become teachable. Everybody has to be able to listen and respect each other. So the musician and the pastor need to respect what the other does and allow them to do it, and not see the other as a threat. It will help with pastors if they have strong vision and they're able to articulate that vision, so that the musician will know what to run with and what to do. And in order to gauge whether or not the minister of music is doing well, pastors need to understand what it takes to fulfill their vision. So you can hire somebody that can actually handle what your vision is. Because if you have a big vision, but you handle somebody with small knowledge and work resources and ethic and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to work out. So all of that has to be discussed up front. Less changes on the back end, more details, more intentionality on the front end, and trust each other ultimately to let our North Star be Matthew 28, that we are making disciples. Pastor, you want to make disciples? Music person, I want to make disciples. Let's figure out how we can do it together. If that's our North Star, then all these other things kind of can be a discussion and worked out. Those are auxiliary pieces. But if we're all trying to make disciples and aim at that honestly, then we can work together.
And pastors have to really know and be able to articulate on paper what they want. They want. Okay? They really have to be able to articulate it. And if you can't articulate it in terms of understanding how worship and arts work, call somebody, check somebody. Look, if I want this, what do I call it? If I
Mhm.
want this to happen, how do I articulate this in a job description?
Mhm.
How do I, that kind of thing has to occur, especially given, like I said, and we all know there's shortages.
Mhm.
Okay. So we're really gonna have to do better. Mr. Carter, and then we're out.
So you mentioned what they want, and sometimes that can be an issue too, versus what the congregation needs.
Oh Lord.
So we got to make sure that what they want is what I want, what the congregation needs.
All right now. All right.
Yeah.
I cannot thank you all enough. These are the people leading our churches, leading in music ministries. And these are the folk, like I said, you can reach out to these people. You don't have to keep stumbling in the dark and firing 4 or 5 people and all of those kinds of things. Thank you. Thank each of you for sharing with us on the beginning of this month, which is Women's History Month. Thank you for everyone listening for hitting my Cash App. If you have not hit it this year, I appreciate it as an independent scholar. And then join me next Monday, March 10th, for Dr. Angela Parker and Dr. Stephanie Crumpton. You know that is going to be fire. And last but not least, as I always say, share the video. It won't cost you anything. You all know that there are pastors who need help. Share the video. You can help someone. God bless everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you, Dr. Martha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to each of you.